Hi, I'm Rachel and welcome to Views on the News, the news show that explores citizens' reactions to current events. I'm here today with Aisha, Gabby, Marissa, Cara and Joshua, who have all chosen news articles that caught their interest so that we can discuss them. We're going to start off with one of the biggest and most controversial ongoing news items at the moment, Boris Johnson's comments about the burqa and the backlash in response. Cara, could you tell us what you read about this issue?
So my articles are from Daily Star Sundays. So this article is about that Boris was given the service from the firearm office that sent the security to protect himself, because there is a fatwa after him.
Joshua, do you think that he needs the extra security?
I seriously doubt it, but knowing how the Conservatives work, I'm sure that they probably foisted some extra security on him, because obviously they need to get the attention on him rather than having it on Theresa May, who's having a great deal of problem at the moment.
But then at the same time, we can't forget about Charlie Hebdo. It just occurred to me that, you know, they for ridiculing a religion, they got assassinated.
Yeah.
So there's a real risk there, even though I think, you know, I don't think nothing's going to happen to Boris Johnson, to be honest with you, but I still think there is a possibility, and that's what happens when you ring fence a religion, when you can't criticise something. As soon as you criticise it, people see it as a personal attack, and they will take, you know, action, not through words, but through actually physical violence. And that's the real problem with the lack of freedom of speech at the moment.
If we think about the number of terrorist attacks, it's very minute. And for another Charlie Hebdo to happen, I'd say is minuscule. I'd say it was more in fear of the fatwa rather than a fatwa being issued.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think about Boris Johnson's comments in general. Joshua, I know that you read an article on this as well.
Yes, I spotted this article in the Mail on Sunday. Headline is, "Don't go full Trump, Boris." That's perhaps a step too far to the far right. And basically, it's talking about how it appears that Boris Johnson seems to be now courting people like Tommy Robinson and those that are now coalescing under the banner of the alt-right. To me, it seems as if Boris is now on political manoeuvrings because he's looking to gain support for his leadership bid.
So you think this is a tactical move from Boris?
Definitely. He's obviously a very intelligent person, and in terms of using language, he's a master at it. And obviously he's written this article, some say, to be like a firebomb thrown in at 10 Downing Street to see what the reaction is. But he's also testing the water to see what support he's getting out in the public sphere. And when you direct a drug at a person or a culture, I think it's pandering almost on bullying and using that level of power, which I think is quite distasteful.
What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's alright to make jokes about certain religious groups?
Absolutely. I think that no religion should be covered from ridicule at all. And I think if we want to progress as a society, we should be challenging and we should be criticising every religion, every aspect of it. Because that's the only way we're going to find the truth, is through contestation, is through opposing views. And I think that's the problem we have at the moment, is that Islam in particular, you can't criticise it. The term Islamophobia, for example, suggests that anyone that suggests, for example, that wearing the veil is a backward thing is labelled straight away as Islamophobe, as if you suffer from a disease. And that's, for me, is a problem, because, you know, criticism should be welcome.
Do we think that Boris's comments count as genuine criticism?
I agree with what you're saying, that there shouldn't be bans on freedom of expression and people should be allowed to express themselves the way that they want to, but Boris Johnson is an elected MP and he should be conscious of offending religious groups.
This reluctance to say that we should have all sorts of jokes in a public sphere is because there's no trust in us, in ordinary people, to listen to Boris Johnson and say, that's such a stupid joke.
I agree, and I think it's completely detracted away from the fact that Boris Johnson was against the ban, and that's what we should be concentrating on rather than, you know, the offensive words he's used.
But then at the same time, if he was against the ban and he's making that public on a platform, he shouldn't sort of shoot himself in the foot by making such comments. Like, if you've got that platform, if you've got that position, if you've got that status, then use it in a positive way. And Boris Johnson needs to understand that there is a certain sensitivity and responsibility when you have the freedom of speech and the power of it.
And Marissa, do you think it's possible, like Joshua suggested, that these remarks are actually intended to validate some existing Islamophobia in maybe a minority of the population?
No, I mean, Boris Johnson is essentially saying, I am against a ban on burqa. And I think that's a progressive position to have. He's in response to the recent ban in Denmark. I also know that there is a ban in Belgium, in France. So there's quite a few countries going along with this, which I think is very backward, because it's not up to the state to decide what piece of clothes a woman should wear. Is none of their business. Is a private issue. He's basically saying, I respect their option to wear it, but I also have the right to criticize them, and that's what is living in a tolerant society. And that's the problem we have today with multiculturalism. But the policy is that you treat every single religion as equal, with equal value, as if, for example, the treatment of certain religions towards gays is okay. You can't criticize it because it's that person's belief. No, they can practice that religion, but I have to challenge it. If I believe in equality and progress in a progressive society, I have the right, I have the duty as a citizen to fight my corner and to, challenge them intellectually.
So do we think that Boris Johnson is merely fulfilling his duty in this situation?
I mean, he was our foreign secretary. That's a big responsibility. And if he's going to go around the world, which there are a lot of Muslim nations, he may very well receive backlash, and that's why you have to be sensitive about things. Whilst what he said isn't exactly really offensive, there are worse things he can say about burqas or about women wearing them. He hasn't struck the balance, and he is offensive. With the internet, things can spread fast, and with misinformation as well. This will only feed into the hands of the Islamists, the really fundamental people.
Marissa, do you want to come back on that?
No, I was just wondering, how would you decide what is acceptable? So, because you were talking about the middle balance, who would you trust to decide what is an acceptable speech, or do you know what I mean?
Unfortunately, we can't trust anybody because it's very subjective. I know.
No, exactly. So that's why you should have no laws. You should, have it out in open in a public sphere, and then decide the public. So if the public decide from now on that they're not happy with Boris Johnson, they can vote him out. It's a democracy. That's how it works. There's a lot of things I don't like, a lot of things I like, I agree with, but that's how a democracy works. If now people listen to this stuff and they don't like it, they vote him out.
That's one way of doing it. This police investigation or this party investigation, that is too far because he's not inciting hatred, he's not inciting violence. So if you want to measure it on that scale, then that is a good scale to measure it on. Has he gone that far? No.
And Aisha, I know that you've been reading about the alt-right. Could you tell us about that?
Today is the Charlottesville anniversary, and the HuffPost Online has written an article about how Charlottesville still has to confront the racism and white supremacy even today, and how after the murder of Heather Hayes by a neo-Nazi, there's still the Ku Klux Klan are openly marching around in Charlottesville, and basically how a lot of the white liberals, citizens in the town, are trying to basically sweep it under the bush and say, we're healing together, we're moving on. But a lot of activists are saying, no, we're going to talk about this issue because we want to know why the Nazis came to this town and why they're here to stay and why they've even never left. We want to address the issues of these statues and parks that you're naming after slave owners. We want to address the issue of the history of this town and why people of colour are feeling uncomfortable because there's still tension with the police. So I found that really interesting that even after all this time, these white supremacists still want to harken back to the legacy of the founders, and the rest of us, being the rest of the town, coloured folk or whoever, are just interlopers.
So do we think that this relates to the Boris Johnson issue? Are his critics who claim that he's promoting Islamophobia afraid ultimately of a situation like Charlottesville?
Well, I'm concerned about it. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm concerned about him being linked to Charlottesville, but I'm concerned that he's taking counsel from the sacked advisor from Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, who is touring Europe at the moment, gathering support for an alt-right campaign movement.
To actually foment this idea that there is this sort of widespread alt-right group out there, underground, is a myth, is mythical. But then at the same time, if you don't have free speech, if you don't allow people to talk about issues such as immigration, such as Islam and so on, and you shut people down, it is true that it will backfire in the long run, because people are not allowed to express what they think about certain ideas and being challenged and have an open discussion about various problems we have in our society. So that I see it more a problem with the lack of free speech in this country more than an outright issue at all.
So you see the alt-right as more of a reaction?
No, but I don't even go along with this idea that there is a sort of big outright groups out there at all.
I think that one of the reasons that these issues and the people who believe in these terrible things might seem more blown out of proportion than they really are is because of how vocal these kind of people are on the internet and how widespread technology is. Aisha, I know you've got an article that's relevant to this, don't you?
Yes, so the Sunday Telegraph had a column on its front page about tech addiction, and they're saying that Britons on average spend every 12 minutes on their phones. And there's an increased problem between in 16 to 24-year-olds with them spending an average of 7 hours a day on their phone. So they're saying how it is disrupted, it could have a negative impact on their relationships, their mental health, and their overall productivity in life.
Okay, well, I'm interested to hear from the 16 to 24-year-olds on this panel whether they think they spend too much time on technology, and if you do, does it affect your mental health, your productivity?
Definitely, I think I'm 24, and because it's just so accessible and it's so, you're at work and you're on your computer and you have the internet there, or you're making a call and you've constantly got your phone with you, the ease of it just makes it kind of constant because it's just always there.
Yeah.
And it's very addictive.
The users also have a responsibility as well. I mean, they could try and reconnect with their family and friends like face to face, or like I know some people when they have large parties or family events, they turn off their phones and leave them in the tray in the hallway so nobody touches their phones so they can have maximum interaction. So there's stuff that you can do yourself to reduce this addiction and reliance, because there's really big heavy dependence. I'm also noticing that it's a generational divide, so people aged 45 and above don't seem to have this problem at all.
I think we should chill out. I mean, you know, I spend time on social media and all sorts of things. I don't see it as an addiction at all. I rely on it for a lot of stuff, research and so on. You know, we are all adults. As soon as we recognise that we spend too many hours on a phone, we can control that. I've refused to use the word addiction.
But 7 hours a day?
Yeah, but if it's your choice, some people actually want to spend that number of hours. You might think, you know, you might disagree with how good that is or not.
Yeah.
But I just refuse to go along with the addiction panic, because every time there was a new technology, you know, either internet or the phone or the TV, you know, in the 50s, there was all these panics about, oh, how is that going to impact human beings? And really, once again, it's about the lack of you know, faith in human beings and our capacity to just decide what we want to do with our spare time, what we don't. And I like Facebook and Twitter. It's okay.
Okay, well, I wonder how this is different, for example, for fast food. Like, should it be the responsibility of fast food companies to stop making their products taste so nice because they're unhealthy, or is it more comparable to, like, smoking, which obviously there's government restrictions to stop that?
No, it's definitely not the company's duty to do anything. We can decide what to eat. We can decide if we want to smoke 50 packs a day, as you're suggesting. And if it's damaging to our health, it's our choice. You might disagree with that choice, but it's my choice.
But is it just adults?
Yeah, it's not just affecting adults, like social media and technology and fast food is also affecting young people, children.
Yeah, but young people is always used to put forward that argument. That's the problem.
Gabby, the article that you looked at was about homelessness, right?
Yeah, so the Community Secretary, James Brickenshaw, is launching an £100 million campaign on tackling homelessness in the UK. This campaign will look at mental health issues among homeless people, drug use, trying to tackle problems with long-term accommodation amongst homeless people. The article also speaks about the Vagrancy Act of 1824, which has been repealed in Northern Ireland and Scotland, but not in England, and it basically makes it illegal for homeless people to be on the streets and to beg, and 8,000 people over the last 4 years have been prosecuted under that act, which I think is really ridiculous. This article's in the Sunday Times.
Recently, I feel that there's been a sort of very inhumane attitude towards homeless people. We saw recently, for example, in Hackney, where they tried to impose PSPOs on homeless people, so they would fine them if they were begging on the streets. We saw the trains are in spikes, so actual spikes were being built on the streets to keep them off nice areas. So I think that's very inhumane and is a horrible way to deal with a problem that we have in a society. But I feel that an easy way to solve this would be to just build more homes and to get them off the streets. You know, there's schemes all over the world where they tested this out, including Canada, where the government was giving out a house to every homeless person, and it worked wonders. So why can't we have this in this country?
And the government should be helping these people, not criminalising them.
Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today, but I'd like to say a huge thank you to Aisha, Gabby, Marissa, Cara and Joshua for the fascinating comments they raised in discussion today. We'd also really like to hear what you think, so please leave your comments below and make sure to keep an eye out for our next few videos. Thank you.